Many years ago, the first Appalachian folks went looking for a place to call home. They come across an impenetrable wall we all know as the Appalachian Mountains. It would be a feat, but they would get across this uncharted land. With hard work and the grace of God, they finally made their way through to the top. Once they broke through, what lay beyond was a true work of God Himself. A land rich with game, water, and everything they would need to live. They immediately knew this was it. Home. It would not be easy, but it was possible. They would build, farm, and live here for years. Eventually, some made the difficult decision to press forward to find a new home, much like Appalachia. You may ask, why would they leave? The promise of wealth, or dealing with people killing and stealing? Losing everything they had would also be a cause. War was a major cause for so many wanting to avoid its wages. Today's story is of one such person. This is a real true story of Thomas Ashley, submitted by our awesome sister, Jana Petty. He was born in Appalachia, relocated to none other than the Ozarks. Won't you sit back and enjoy the tale of Thomas's journey? Appalachia, the mountains are like no other. From its rigid terrain, beautiful wildlife, to the people that live their lives here, to the strange, unexplained stories that folks share. Join me while I share this amazing place, one story at a time. Thomas Ashley was born January the 7th, 1848, to parents Thomas and Elvira Ashley. They lived in Georgia. Thomas was one of 6 children, 3 brothers, and 2 sisters. They were a simple farm family, owning no slaves, raising their children the best way they knew how. Thompson began to hear rumors of war with the problems between the North and South. To avoid the conflict, he packed up and headed west, settling in the town of Marble in Saline County, Arkansas. The family was listed in the 1860 census in Saline County. In 1891, Arkansas was seceded from the Union when Thomas was but 13 years old. 10 years later, in 1870, Thomas was again in the census as a farmer with his family, but not in Arkansas, rather in Morgan County, Alabama. Thomas must have gotten a little homesick for Appalachia. January the 14th, 1870, Thomas would marry Catherine Ryan. Everyone called her Katie. The two had 2 children. Enoch Cornelius Ashley was born July 1871. Christopher Columbus Ashley was born May the 19th, 1874. He was born in Ryan's Crossroads, Alabama. After 1874, Thomas would move back to Arkansas. Apparently, Alabama farming wasn't going well. They settled in Yell County, Arkansas around 1880. They moved to the town of Riley, Arkansas, and set up their home. The two farmed and raised their boys and tried to live their life with what was left after the war devastated the county. In the 1900 census, the two were still in Yell County, but moved to Richland, close to the Blue Mountain. They would continue to farm and mine for coal, being very prosperous, even raising sheep. The boys would grow up there. Enoch, close to his parents, he would marry and raise a family. Christopher would marry and move to Tomball, Texas. He became custodian of the school there. He would pass in 1960. His body was brought home to the Blue Mountain Cemetery and laid to rest next to his parents. In 1910, Thomas and Katie moved again, just down the road to a smaller farm at the foot of the Blue Mountain in the small coal mining town of Waveland. Years later, Waveland Park would be built there. Many people would pass by their resting place on their way to camp and enjoy the lake. In 1920, Thomas and Katie would again be in the census in Yell County. Little did they know, it would be Thomas's last one. They still lived on their little sheep farm in Waveland, Arkansas. December 29th, 1929, Thomas would take his last breath. He had a tragic accident, being burned over the left side of his body. It was not listed what caused the burns. Thomas would be laid to rest at the Blue Mountain Cemetery, to be joined by Katie some years later. Man, oh man, what a special story this was. I'd like to thank Jenna for sending this in. Now let's read what she had to say. She said, I had looked in various cemeteries in Crawford and Sebastian County, Arkansas. I found rich and famous people with such interesting stories, but none stuck my fancy. I remembered a small cemetery my husband and I passed down in Yell County when we would go to the lake years back. I always meant to stop, but as always, time got away from me. The Blue Mountain Cemetery is a small, unassuming place shaded by oak trees. I found elaborate headstones with interesting stories. I thought to myself, what about the unassuming headstones? They were poor farmers trying to scratch out a living on the land. Their stories deserve to be told. Someone once told me you never truly died until your name is no longer spoken. I decided to bring life back to the bones of Thomas Ashley. This is a simple story of simple country folks working hard to make a living during an era of war uncertainty. Their roots were Appalachia, much like mine. They worked and finished their days at the foot of a mountain, not so unlike the mountains of Appalachia. Many times on our way to Waveland Park, I would find an area of the mountain, block out the lines, and think about those who came before and how they struggled in weather with disease, raising a family along with the faith in the Lord. Thomas and Katie has just been resurrected. Their stories of their struggles will now go on. Well, folks, I want to thank you for sitting and listening to the true story of Thomas Ashley. I really do appreciate Jana for taking the time and researching Thomas's story and sharing it with us all so that we could keep their memory alive. Well, I appreciate y'all listening. I love yous to pieces. And I'll see you next time.